There was no bloody murder scene, there was no obvious murder weapon, but Carol and Stephen's deaths were cold and calculated murders, carried out by a dangerous man who clearly planned to get away with it.
In the quiet, picturesque coastal town of West Mercia in Essex, England, where families stroll along the beach and neighbors greet each other by name, something unthinkable happened. On Easter Sunday 2023, a well-loved couple, Stephen and Carol Baxter, were found dead in their home.
Now, police say a man who murdered a married couple by poisoning them with the opioid drug fentanyl.
It shocked the entire community. At first, it seemed like a tragic double suicide, two aging parents who passed peacefully together. But the truth, when it came out, was far more disturbing, because behind their deaths was a man they knew, a man they trusted, a man who sat at their dinner table, smiled in their family photos, and slowly, over the course of 10 years, plotted their murder. His name, Luke DeWitt, and his crime, one of the most cold, calculated, and manipulative murders in recent British history. If you're into gripping true crime stories, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and stick around. This case is as haunting as it gets.
Right, okay. Right, are you with the patient now?
They are there.
Right, how many people require help, just to confirm?
2.
Right.
The deceptive, friendship. To understand how Luke DeWitt pulled off this horrific betrayal, we have to go back to the beginning. Around 2012 or 2013. That's when he first met the Baxter family. Stephen and Carol ran a successful business called Casplash, which made non-slip shower mats. They were millionaires, but you'd never know it. Down to earth, generous, and friendly, they were respected in their community and loved by their daughter, Ellie.
Lovely house you grew up in, and how much you adored your parents. What were they like? The scenes of you dancing with your mum, and she was so full of life.
Yeah, she really was. She was a very bubbly, outgoing person.
DeWitt entered their lives in the most innocent way, through work. He was hired as a freelance IT consultant to build and manage the company website. At first, he was just another tech guy, but over time, he became much more. He started spending more time with Carol, who had been struggling with Hashimoto's disease, a thyroid disorder that can leave sufferers tired, depressed, and vulnerable. Carol was desperate for help, and DeWitt was there with a listening ear, endless advice, and what appeared to be genuine concern. He convinced her that he knew people who could help, doctors, specialists, others who suffered from the same illness. Carol believed him. She had no idea that every single one of those people was fake. The web of lies. Luke DeWitt wasn't just a manipulator. He was a master of deception. Over the course of 10 years, he created an entire fictional universe. He made up more than 20 online personas, each with their own email addresses, medical opinions, backstories, and even social media posts. One of these personas was Dr. Andrea Bowden, a supposedly trusted medical expert who gave Carol advice on managing her Hashimoto's. There was no Andrea Bowden.
To maintain that control.
Hi Carol, it's Jenny. It's Jenny.
Hi Carol, it's Jenny. It's Cheryl's sister. Yes, oh, it's so nice to finally speak to you after all these messages we've been doing.
She never existed. It was Luke the whole time. Other fake identities posed as fellow patients, friends, or even therapists. He used these personas to reinforce harmful medical ideas and build dependency.
That was kind of the understanding that he led us all to believe.
Carol, already feeling isolated and vulnerable because of her illness, began trusting Luke more than her own family. In her eyes, he was a lifesaver, but he wasn't trying to save her. He was isolating her, mentally rewiring her, gaining her trust to set the stage for something far darker. And Stephen? He was cautious. He had his doubts about Luke, but tried to keep the peace for Carol's sake. That hesitation would cost him dearly. The fatal plan on Good Friday, April 7th, 2023, DeWitt visited the Baxters' home like he had many times before. Nothing about that visit seemed out of the ordinary, at least from the outside. But what the Baxters didn't know was that Luke had come prepared. In his possession were fentanyl patches, prescribed to his late father before he passed away. Fentanyl is one of the deadliest opioids in the world, even in tiny amounts. During that visit, DeWitt tampered with the couple's medication, infusing it with lethal doses of fentanyl. After ensuring the poisoned pills were in place, he quietly left the house. But he didn't just walk away. He locked the front door, double-locked it in fact, and headed home, where he opened a surveillance app on his phone. He watched as Stephen and Carol slowly and unknowingly ingested the poison and began to die. Yes, you heard that right. He watched them die. Like a horror movie villain, only this was real. He had previously installed surveillance in their home under the ice, pretense of helping them feel safe. But in truth, it was to witness their final moments without lifting a finger.
Oh, and the house was locked. I couldn't get in. So we ended up smashing our way in. Yeah, it was very traumatic, to be honest.
In the documentary, it's such a striking moment.
The discovery. 2 days later, on Easter Sunday, the Baxters' daughter Ellie arrived at the house. She found both her parents slumped in their conservatory armchairs, unresponsive. Panicked, she called emergency services. As she sobbed into the phone, trying to explain what had happened, Luke DeWitt arrived at the house, pretending to be a supportive friend. He calmly took over the 999 call, feeding false information to the dispatcher, all while Ellie cried in the background. Police initially had no reason to suspect DeWitt. He was friendly, helpful, and seemed genuinely distraught. But soon, the story started to unravel, and unfortunately, the first person to fall under suspicion wasn't DeWitt. It was Ellie. The investigation. Toxicology reports later revealed that both Stephen and Carol had died from acute fentanyl poisoning. That alone was suspicious. The couple had no history of opioid use, and fentanyl is not something people just accidentally take. Then came the real twist. Just 1 day after their deaths, a new version of their will was discovered. In it, the main beneficiary wasn't their daughter or other family members. It was Luke DeWitt. He had rewritten the will using one of his many fake identities and claimed that Stephen had dictated it. When police raided DeWitt's home, they were stunned by what they found. 80 electronic devices. Phones, tablets, laptops. Most were hidden. Many were encrypted. But on them were years' worth of messages, fake emails, and digital records of his manipulation. Investigators also found photos of Stephen and Carol dead in their chairs, stored on DeWitt's phone. He had watched them die and then taken photos. This was no heat-of-the-moment crime. It was methodical, slow-burning, and deeply calculated. The trial. In March 2024, Luke DeWitt stood trial at Chelmsford Crown Court, facing 2 counts of murder.
Carol and Stephen.
Luke, the reason we're here today is I'm going to have to arrest you, and that's on suspicion of murder. All right, as part of a police investigation, you've been identified as being a suspect in relation to the deaths of Caroline and Stephen Baxter, 27th and 9th of April.
During the trial, he tried to claim that Stephen had been behind the fake identities, that the manipulation had been mutual, and he had merely helped document it. But the evidence was overwhelming. Not only had DeWitt created and controlled the fake personas, but he also wrote detailed notes about his manipulation strategy. He even had timelines of their deaths saved in digital files. The jury took just a few days to find him guilty. Judge Christopher Morgan described the crime as profoundly disturbing, adding that DeWitt had infiltrated the victims' lives, destroyed their autonomy, and robbed them of dignity. DeWitt was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 37 years behind bars. He'll be 70 by the time he's even eligible for release. Detective Superintendent Rob Kirby, who led the investigation, called DeWitt one of the most dangerous men he had ever encountered. And honestly, it's hard to argue with that.
There was no bloody murder scene. There was no obvious murder weapon. But Carol and Stephen's deaths were cold and calculated murders, carried out by a dangerous man who clearly planned to get away with it.
The aftermath. But even with justice served, the aftermath of the murders left deep scars, especially for Ellie Baxter. For months, she was treated with suspicion, even by extended family. Some people thought she might have had a hand in the crime, or at least known something. She lost more than just her parents. She lost her support system, her peace, her reputation. To clear her name and share the truth, Ellie participated in the ITV documentary, The Essex Millionaire Murders.
Get better, and it was really sad to see someone you love deteriorate like that.
In it, she described the emotional toll the investigation had on her, how she was forced to grieve her parents while defending herself, and the gut-wrenching realization that the man her parents trusted had manipulated them to death. Now, a mother of 3, Ellie is slowly rebuilding her life. But the trauma will always be there. How do you recover from something like this? How do you learn to trust again? The case of Luke DeWitt is a disturbing reminder that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they're soft-spoken, helpful, friendly. They show up when you're vulnerable and offer a helping hand. until they close it into a fist. What DeWitt did wasn't just murder. It was psychological warfare. He gaslit his victims for years, twisted their reality, and then stole their lives, all while pretending to be their friend. As for the Baxter family and the community of West Mercia, the ripple effects of this tragedy are still being felt. The wounds are still raw. And Ellie's story stands as both a cautionary tale and a cry for awareness. If this story moved you or chilled you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We bring you in-depth true crime stories like this every week. Your support helps us keep telling these important stories. And remember, stay safe, stay smart, and always, always be careful who you trust.